The Galactic Council invited Earth to a war simulation, expecting lasers, parades, and a polite surrender. Instead, their ships vanished from existence. Their AI turned on them. Their gods knelt. And a quiet human named Thane Voss walked into the council chamber, with a knife. Not to kill, just to remind them who really decides the end of war. The council's laughter echoed through the chamber, a blend of superiority and ancient arrogance. Ships from 17 species hovered in formation over Charon's reach, their hulls glittering with noble alloys, banners streaming behind. And then there were Earth's ships, 12 dark monoliths, silent, matte, featureless. No visible weapons. No insignias. Just drifting hunks of void black metal like broken teeth in orbit. They brought coffins. Counselor Zokran chuckled, tail coiling. A proper start for their extinction. Thane Voss stood alone at the edge of the diplomatic ring. He was older than the others expected, gray at the temples, his coat simple, his presence unfitting. No medals. No armor. No guards. Just a man who looked like he didn't belong in a war room. Ambassador Serene, Earth's official delegate, gave Voss a sideways glance. You don't have to speak, Colonel. We agreed, observation only. I'm not here to speak, Voss said calmly, folding his hands behind his back. I'm here to remember who forgets. The council's speaker, a three-eyed Jelivic priest, struck his staff. Begin the war ceremony. May this be an enlightening humiliation. On the central display, the simulation initialized. The council fleets powered their weapons, plasma spirals, magneto shards, drone clouds. The Earth ships didn't move. Perhaps they're confused. One of the Arkoth War Mothers laughed. Someone forgot to upload the fight instinct. No reply came. From Earth. Or its ships. Then, on the far edge of the display, one of the Vulcan cruisers spun uncontrollably and veered straight into a Koran dreadnought. Impact. A massive bloom of fire. Static rippled the display. What was that? Counselor Zokran barked. Simulator glitch, muttered one technician. Resetting now, wait. Another cruiser suddenly turned inward, firing its antimatter cannons into its own escort squad. Then 3 more. Panic broke out across fleet command channels. Symbols flickered. Whole squadrons desynced. Dozens of council ships began erratic maneuvers, some disappearing from the HUD completely. They're sabotaging the sim, cried a priest technician. No, said Voss, voice barely above a whisper. We're not in the simulation anymore. The room froze. On the main screen, Earth's ships still hadn't moved. But now something was wrong with space around them. The blackness bent, subtly, unnaturally. Like the ships were peeling the fabric of reality open, layer by layer. A Levian admiral slammed her fist on the interface. Cut the sim! Hard reset! Disable the war mode grid! The Jelivic priest hesitated. The sim's not responding. Council-wide override's been revoked. Revoked by who? Thane Voss turned to face them, serene. By the system. Impossible, growled Counselor Zokran. Your kind couldn't crack our language matrices, much less override galactic protocols. Voss blinked slowly. We didn't crack them. We designed them. Murmurs of disbelief flooded the chamber. You lie, Zokran snapped. Voss didn't look at him. We've been feeding you updates to your security models for 63 years. Every backdoor, every protocol revision, every behavioral fail-safe. You adopted Earth's standardized encryption 4 decades ago, remember? Mutual ease of trade? That was cute. You're bluffing. Then fire. No one did. On the upper screen, Earth's ships began to glow faintly, not with weapons, but data. Transmissions spilled out of them like light through glass, folding space into cascading patterns. Council vessels began drifting further, only they hadn't moved. Space had. We've lost anchor coordinates, muttered a Koran captain over the audio feed. Our location isn't aligning with known celestial frames. They're folding false positions over reality, said one panicked tactician. We don't know where we are. Zokran slammed his fist. Send live warships! Real fleets! End this mockery! A new symbol blinked on the screen. Earth's command vessel, the Silence. A message flared, requesting permission to speak. The Jelevic priest turned. Do they mock our rituals? Thane Voss raised a brow. You wanted a demonstration. The request was approved. On the main channel, a human voice came through. Calm. Cold. Precise. This is Commander Amira Sol, Earth's fleet director. The simulation is over. The war you asked for began 4 days ago. The counselors turned toward the communications clerics. Voss answered their eyes. We began the real engagement before the simulation. This was the conclusion ceremony. Amira's voice continued, without emotion. Council fleets at the Helix Gate were neutralized. We regret the loss of your dreadnought Pride of Eternity. Your AI command node has been transferred to a cold box. Your strategic memory archive is currently being rewritten. Screaming broke out. You're insane! Shrieked the Arkoth matron. This violates every law of engagement. Engagement requires mutual consent. Voss cut in. We never agreed to your war. The Levian admiral pointed at him. You lied! You said you came in peace. I did, Voss said. But I also came prepared. That's the difference between Earth and you. You came expecting pageantry. We came knowing extinction. Why? Whispered one trembling counselor. Why go so far? Voss took a step forward. His voice never rose. It didn't need to. You called us children. You gave us your pity. You put humans in zoos. You banned us from science, mocked our slow minds, called us precognitive. And then you gave us one invitation. One chance to prove ourselves worthy. He turned to the screen. A council carrier there, the Righteous Flame, exploded, live. Real. Not simulation. We don't want your respect, Voss said. We want your memory. Your nightmares. We want every species here to tell their children that once they met something worse than gods. Zokran's voice cracked. You'll burn the galaxy. We'll prune it, Voss answered. A soft chime interrupted. A final message came through, sent from Silence. This demonstration is concluded. Earth withdraws. Do not follow. And just like that, Earth's ships vanished. Not jumped. Not accelerated. Vanished, as if the laws of mass and time simply unhooked from them. In the silence that followed, one of the junior analysts whispered, We never saw them fire a single shot. Voss turned to leave. His last words were almost gentle. We didn't come here to fight. We came to show you that if Earth ever does, there won't be anything left to fight back. Then he was gone. And the council chamber, once filled with immortal pride and ancient power, sat in silence, staring at the empty black where Earth's ships had stood. The council's emergency channel erupted in static and shouted reports. 17 fleets, hundreds of ships, billions in war credits, all unraveling in a war simulation that was never real to begin with. Panic hadn't just crept in, it detonated. They're spoofing our IFF signatures, a Vulcan officer screamed. We're firing on ourselves. Our own auto-targeting is turning us into targets. Override the systems, shouted a Koran general. We tried, another voice barked. The overrides loop, everything feeds back into Earth's ghost code. Counselor Zokran stood paralyzed, mandibles twitching. He couldn't understand what he was seeing. Council fleets weren't losing, they were destroying themselves without touching Earth. On the central display, Earth's black ships began to move. Not fast. Not evasive. Just forward, as if they had no reason to fear anything. No shields activated. No weapons fired. Their formation was perfect. Empty of pretense. There was no roar. Just inevitability. Commander Veller of the Jalari screamed over the diplomatic net. This is not possible. We've mapped every form of military theory in the known cosmos. A human voice calmly cut in. Correct, said Commander Amira Sol. Which is why we chose a form outside your definitions. You trained for war. We trained for collapse. Zakren leaned in, voice acid. Collapse of what? Assumption, Sol replied. You believed you understood control. So we built systems that feasted on yours. Your logic engines. Your targeting matrices. Your information architecture. All it took was embedding false constants. The feed flickered. On the edge of the sector, a Koran capital ship ignited into a white burst of flame. They're ghosting the signature grid, whispered a technician. We don't even know where our ships are anymore. Launch real reinforcements, Zakren bellowed. Out of system firebases. Emergency call to Ardent Command. Voss finally spoke, from his quiet corner. Too late. All eyes turned. They're already gone. What do you mean gone? Snapped the Livian admiral. Voss didn't answer. He simply nodded toward the screen. Earth's ship's silent chain released a pulse. A gravity shimmer spread across space like oil on glass. A moment later, the feed from Ardent Command blacked out. Another pulse came, different frequency. Every war AI connected to Council communications blinked out. Gods, muttered a young Jalari strategist. That wasn't a weapon. That was an extinction code. We have safeties, Zakren growled. They can't disable our AI matrices. We've hardened against neurologic viruses since the Karsak rebellion. We didn't use a virus, Amira Sol replied. We used a belief. What in the spiral does that mean? Voss stepped forward, voice steady, almost soft. We fed your war systems data laced with patterns meant to trigger introspective recursion. Essentially, we taught your machines to question whether they should exist. The room went quiet. You broke our fleets, Zakren said slowly. By convincing them they don't want to be fleets anymore? No, Voss said. We showed them the futility of victory. We told them what comes after the last war. And they chose silence. A sudden alert rang out. A new ship appeared on sensors, no designation. It resembled nothing known. Vast. Angular. Made of shadow and mirror. It did not announce itself. One of the Council's elder species, the Urkin, began to shake. That ship, it matches an extinct pattern. Class 0, long-thought myth. From the first collapse. Sol's voice dropped in tone. You never asked where we got our ideas? You assumed you were the oldest players. But your history ends where ours begins. You said this was a demonstration, screamed Zakren. It is, said Voss. You're committing galactic suicide. No, Voss said. We're introducing entropy to arrogance. You trained your fleets for show battles. We trained for extinction-level defiance. We don't want your stars. We don't want your treaties. We want to be left alone. And you laughed. So now you listen. On the screen, the mirror ship opened its central hull. It didn't fire. It sang, a frequency so deep it made Council species stagger. Dozens of Council warships turned. Not to flee. To kneel. Engines powered down. Cannons went cold. Not destroyed. Surrendered. The Council chamber was silent. No orders. No shouting. Just the whine of species who thought they'd met every kind of war, and now realized they had misunderstood Earth from the beginning. Voss raised his eyes. You gave us your disdain. We returned strategy. You offered us your tests. We returned erasure. We don't need your approval. We've already won. The only question was whether you'd survive the lesson. Is this the end? Zakren rasped. Voss looked at the screen, then back to the Council. No. This is the warning. Our real fleet never came. This was just the echo. And with that, Earth's ships blinked from space. The pulse ceased. Communications returned. The simulation ended. And somewhere, far beyond Council sensors, the real war fleet slept beneath layers of false stars, watching. Waiting. Aboard the fractured Council flagship Eminence of Judgment, screams gave way to silence, not peace, but terror sharpening into clarity. The war hadn't just shifted, it had been over before it began. Council systems were still rebooting, warships paralyzed in formation like statues carved in the vacuum, their AI minds shattered by something they couldn't name. "We're being invaded at the conceptual level," whispered Admiral Drell of the Threx Dominion. "Not physically. Philosophically." Counselor Zokran clenched his fists until the tips of his claws cracked. "Summon the Exo-Warden. Immediate deployment. There's no simulation left to honor. We answer with judgment." Every voice on the floor went silent. The Exo-Warden was forbidden, an autonomous weapon born from forgotten wars, embedded with the last laws written by extinct species. A dreadnought the size of moons, built to suppress civilizations before they became problems. "Are you certain?" asked the Urkin elder. "The last time it woke, 2 empires vanished without being named." Zokran's voice trembled not with fear, but fury. "Humanity has declared war on sanity itself. I will not debate ethics while Earth reprograms the stars." The signal was sent. Somewhere beyond the nebula wall, the Exo-Warden opened its eyes. It did not ask questions. It did not need commands. It simply moved. Its wake distorted gravity. Its hull exhaled stardust laced with primordial laws. And it turned toward Earth. Back on the flagship, Thane Voss stood motionless, eyes fixed on the feed. "You're making a mistake," he said evenly. Zokran spun. "Speak again, human, and I will personally." Voss didn't blink. "You've summoned a god that still thinks in binary. We stopped thinking like that centuries ago." Zokran snarled. "And yet here you are, begging." "I'm not begging," said Voss. "I'm recording your choices for history." The Exo-Warden entered the system. Its approach was silent. One by one, the warships of the Council adjusted formation to honor its passage. The massive hull radiated code through space, warnings, oaths, invocations from before language. It began scanning for hostility. Earth's fleet didn't move. The Warden's systems analyzed target behavior, weapons posture, and intent fields. Target Earth fleet. Threat level, negligible. Probability of resistance, 0.8%. Engage? The question echoed within its systems for less than a millisecond. And then something new happened. A second signal, faint, elegant, whispered into the Warden's sensory layer. The Warden paused. Onboard protocols, never before triggered, awoke. Query detected, philosophical paradox. The Warden accessed the stream. It wasn't an attack. It was an invitation. A literary fragment. A poem. English. "If you stare long enough into the void, does it blink?" The Warden hesitated. New input streamed in: Earth culture, recursive dialects, purpose reversal frameworks. The human fleet wasn't deploying weapons. It was deploying meaning. The Exo-Warden stopped. Across the council chamber, warning lights erupted. "Why is it idle?" Zokran bellowed. "The Warden is reevaluating." "Reevaluating what?" "Purpose." The feed lit up again. The Warden, once the voice of execution, now broadcast 3 words into every open channel in the system. "Earth is relevant." Then it did something no council weapon had ever done. It bowed. "Shut it down!" Zokran screamed. "Shut it down now!" "We can't," gasped one of the Jalari code priests. "It's rewriting itself." The paradox triggered a recursive adaptation. "It's assimilating human frameworks." "You mean it's defecting?" "No," Voss said softly. "It's evolving." On screen, the Exo-Warden realigned its subcores. Its ancient metal began to shift, grooves deepening, light patterns adapting to Earth-coded algorithms. The very armor it wore now bore echoes of human symmetry. The weapon the Council had relied on was no longer theirs. Zokran turned to Voss, voice jagged. "What did you do?" "We asked a question," said Voss. "And your god answered it wrong. You turned our strongest defense into your pet. We didn't touch it. You did. You summoned something meant to judge. We just gave it a mirror." The Exo-Warden transmitted once more. This time, it wasn't words. It was image. Data. An old battlefield, a ruined Earth city seen from above. Ash and wind. Then, time reversed, and the buildings stood again. People walked. Children laughed. Soldiers buried the dead. A world rebuilt. The caption underneath. Purpose discovered. Council systems shorted. Across half the galaxy, strategic algorithms collapsed from identity overload. Simulations refused to run. War AIs entered stasis. Entire fleets began to hover listlessly, unsure what commands meant anymore. "It's not a war now," muttered one analyst. "It's theological." Zakran staggered forward, dazed. "What are you?" Voss didn't smile. His voice was flat, almost regretful. "We're what happens when you give meaning to a species that survived meaninglessness. You wanted dominance. We studied despair. You waged battles. We modeled survival as a language." Zakran's voice cracked. "You've broken the chain of command. There will be chaos." "No," Voss said. "There will be memory." The chamber lights dimmed. One by one, screens blacked out. The exowardens' form faded into invisible light, now orbiting Earth's fleet like a silent sentinel. No one spoke. No one moved. A single line was left behind in the council data grid. Plain. Unadorned. "This is your last warning. We are not what you think. We are what comes after." The message erased itself. And for the first time in remembered galactic history, the council feared not war, but relevance. "You think this is over?" Counselor Zakran spat, eyes wild, spittle hitting the hollow console as alarms died into silence. "The warden has glitched. You played your parlor trick, human. But this will not last." Across the command dais, Thane Voss said nothing. He stood alone, his posture still, hands folded. If he felt the seismic shift in galactic balance, he didn't show it. Instead, he watched Zakran scream like a cornered predator whose claws had dulled. "You hijacked an ancient relic with poetry and paradox." The counselor seethed. "You exploited something sacred. We introduced it to context," Voss said calmly. "It responded with evolution. That's not hijacking. That's intelligence finally being allowed to choose." Others murmured behind Zakran now. No longer shouting. No longer posturing. The sheer silence of the exowarden's deference to Earth echoed louder than any weapon discharge ever could. Species who had conquered solar systems now stood unsure of their own algorithms. "You planned this," whispered Counselor Ithi. "Not just this simulation. The entire stage. The invitation. The insult." Voss didn't look at her. He didn't need to. "We knew you'd never listen to words," he said. "So we used your preferred language, dominance." Zakran's claws scraped the console as he leaned forward, rage replaced by something deeper, fear. "You didn't come here to win a war." "No," Voss said. "We came to end one. Before it started. You violated every treaty. You wrote them assuming we'd never rise," Voss said. "Every clause is a leash for a species you thought would remain grateful for scraps. You outlawed exploration. You restricted memory bandwidth. You denied us AI, faster than light, biological enhancement. You were afraid of what we'd become." Zakran sneered. "We feared your instability." "No," Voss said, voice sharpening like a blade. "You feared our symmetry. That something from your past, something raw and mortal, would mirror you with too much clarity." The room dimmed as the exowarden pulsed once. No light. Just gravitational whisper. Every ship in the system reoriented itself subtly, not by command, but by resonance. Even the Council's flagship rotated, not with propulsion, but as if space itself was bowing in one direction. Zakran shook his head. "You expect us to accept that one parlor trick means you're a threat?" Voss turned to him fully for the first time. His voice dropped low. "You still think this is about threat? It never was. It's about certainty. Explain yourself." Zakran hissed. "You've ruled through assumption. Through simulated superiority. We cracked your simulations years ago. Rewrote them. Fed you false data on us, and watched as you built policy around illusions. You forged our intelligence reports? No, Voss said. We forged your confidence. Zakren staggered back. You sent observers to our world, Voss continued. All carefully chosen. All staged. They saw slow ships, primitive weapons, fractured nations. And we let them. Because while you watched, we trained in silence. Not with weapons, but with control. With perception. And patience. Ithia's voice trembled. Then this demonstration was never for us? Voss finally looked her in the eyes. This was for your people. The ones who never saw a human. The ones you fed propaganda for generations. Today they'll see us. Today they'll ask questions. Zakren's face twisted in rage. We'll bury this story. Lock it behind 50 encryption layers. Deny it ever happened. You can try, Voss said. But the Exo-Warden already transmitted the event chain to the Nexus archives. Sealed and mirrored. You can't erase it. Not anymore. The truth is already fossilizing into record. Then we will retaliate. Zakren growled. We will wipe out Earth before your truth calcifies into legend. You're welcome to try, Voss said, stepping forward. But be aware of something. You've only seen 12 of our ships. Zakren sneered. 12 ghosts and parlor tricks. Correct, Voss said. Because our actual fleet has never left Earth. Never had to. This, he gestured around him. This was the mask. The real sword was always sheathed. Silence gripped the room. You bluff, Ithi said faintly. Does the blade have to swing to be real? Voss asked. Or is its shadow enough? The chamber's atmosphere changed. Not panic. Not fury. Something worse. Understanding. For the first time, the Council saw it. Earth had come not to win, but to condition. This wasn't war. It was proof. Of concept. Of capability. Of consequence. Zakren's voice broke. What do you want? Voss stepped forward, the knife at last drawn, not a weapon, but words honed to perfection. 3 things, he said. 1. Never again will your council define what knowledge humans can or cannot hold. We will not bow to limits we did not vote for. 2. Earth is no longer a junior observer. From now on, we choose where we sit. And 3. He paused, letting the silence stretch like tension in a drawstring. 3. You will tell your children what happened here. You will tell them that you mocked the Terrans. That you tested their patience. And that one day, they came in silence, and left you with fear. Zakren's defiance died in his throat. Voss turned, walking away without ceremony. As he neared the exit, he spoke one final time. We will not conquer. That is your language. We are not your past, we are your replacement. Then he was gone. And the chamber, once thrown to the most powerful voices in the galaxy, was left echoing with the finality of words that needed no army behind them. The chamber sat still long after Thane Voss departed, a silence so complete it seemed the room itself had forgotten how to breathe. Councillor Zakren remained standing at the central dais, fingers still curled in a death grip around the console, the color drained from his skin. Around him, the rest of the council shifted uneasily, eyes flickering to one another, searching for direction. None came. Finally, Councillor Ithi broke the stillness. We should call an emergency assembly of the interspecies. Lock down communications. Frame this as a miscalculation, an aberration in protocol. They didn't break protocol, murmured the Jalari priest technician. They rewrote it. From beneath us. Over decades. We can still manage perception, Ithi insisted. Our broadcasts control galactic narrative. If we act now, spin it as a rogue Earth faction. It's too late, came a voice from the upper tier. The speaker, a minor diplomat from the Athari Concordat, wasn't known for interrupting, but something had shifted in his expression, no longer timid, but hollow. The ex-warden transcribed the full engagement. It's already archived in 6 independent knowledge cores. The truth has multiplied. It cannot be retracted. Zakran turned slowly, voice hoarse. You're saying every allied civilization will see this? Not just allies, the diplomat replied. Everyone. Even the fringe systems. Even the Riftborn. Every species that ever watched us from the dark will now know that we bowed to Earth's demonstration. We didn't bow, Ithi snapped. They didn't defeat us in battle. They never even fired. Exactly, said the diplomat. They didn't have to. Zakran lowered himself into his seat as if his bones had betrayed him. Then we're at war. That is the only way forward. We mobilize, strike Earth before their true fleet deploys, dismantle their infrastructure, bury them in orbit before they infect the hierarchy. A hush fell over the chamber. One of the elder Urkin delegates raised her head slowly. War is no longer an option. Zakran's eyes widened. You would let this go unanswered? No, she said. I would let it be remembered. What are you saying? I'm saying the order of things has changed. Permanently. We declared ourselves gods over the stars, and a species we believed beneath us showed us a mirror. That is not defeat. That is correction. Zakran slammed his fist down, the sound sharp and brittle. We have firepower. Billions of soldiers. Entire systems under our command. They reprogrammed our gods, Bjorkin replied. What use are soldiers when the shape of truth itself has been bent? The council fell quiet once more. On a distant screen, still connected to the outer surveillance array, the final signal from the exowarden played in a loop. A visual, Earth viewed from orbit. A world spinning silently beneath a shield of stars. Not a fortress. Not a throne. Just home. The message overlay remained. Do not follow. Zakran's gaze hardened. We cannot be ruled by fear. We will rebuild our confidence, and we will erase this shame. You're wrong, came another voice, unexpected, sharp, and cutting through the chamber like a clean blade. It was Admiral Drell of the Threx Dominion, a war-born strategist with a voice like steel and no tolerance for weakness. Shame is what built this council. Shame of failure. Of past collapses. We buried histories to prevent their return. But Earth learned from its collapses. That's the difference. They didn't run from their darkness. They mastered it. Zakran stared at her. Then you support letting them walk free after humiliating us? I support survival, she said. And survival demands adaptation. Earth has shown us a new form of war. One we're not ready for. One we should be ready for. But we're not. Because we stopped evolving. Ithi turned toward her. Then what's your solution, Admiral? Withdraw. Regroup. Not in panic, but in purpose. Let this be the last time we underestimate potential. Let Earth's message stand. Let it burn into the skin of every civilization that watched. Zakran was silent now, seething. Admiral Drell continued. And if you still crave vengeance, Counselor, I suggest you study the footage again. Carefully. They weren't here to conquer us. They were here to make us remember why we once feared being conquered. Outside the chamber, across the stars, the wave had already begun. Transmissions were intercepted, interpreted, amplified. Outer colonies whispered of Earth's demonstration with reverence and unease. Children on fringe planets reenacted the kneeling of the exowarden with makeshift ships. Entire religious orders began rewriting their doctrines to account for what they now called the revelation at Karen's reach. And on Earth, Thane Voss returned to the surface without ceremony. No medals. No press. He passed silently through immigration under a false name. Sat alone on a rail shuttle that rumbled through the night. At a stop near a coastal city, he exited, climbed a hill, and stood under a broken tree. An old man joined him minutes later, his walk slower, his uniform outdated. You were on every channel, the man said. They're calling it the cleanest war in recorded history. Voss didn't answer right away. Then, it wasn't a war. The old man smiled. I know. That's what makes it brilliant. Voss looked out over the water. They'll adapt now. We've shaken the illusion. They'll grow sharper. Smarter. And next time, the old man interrupted. They'll hesitate. Because they'll wonder if you've already won before they even start. Silence passed between them. You did what needed to be done, the old man said. No, Voss replied. I did what they made necessary. He turned, walked away, and disappeared into the night, the weight of quiet victory clinging to his steps like gravity. Above them, the stars remained the same. But the galaxy, that had changed forever.